Joining me now, three of the best radio talk show hosts in the country here in Washington, D.C. First, Joe Madison from Sirius XM Radio. Good to see you, Joe. Steve Malzberg, WOR Radio Network right here in New York City. CNN contributor Errol Louis, host of the morning show on WWRL, also columnist, New York Daily News, CNN contributor and good guy. I think that's everything. Is that right? Is that it? Well, let me start first, if I may. Joe, what are your listeners saying about the auto bailout versus the Wall Street bailout?
Well, it's, that Paulson obviously never worked in an auto plant, and that he doesn't know auto giants, and that he took care of his buddies. That's exactly what they're saying, Lou. And I know that people are complaining about the money that union workers make. Well, I worked in an auto plant. My father worked for all his life in an auto plant. And I was telling your producers, you know, these are the people who fill out W-2 forms and pay their taxes without the advice of a lot of high-priced, silk-stocking lawyers. They're the ones who make the economy work. They're the ones who bought the cars. They're the ones who bought clothes.
I mean, they used to.
Well, they used to, and they're the ones who sent their kids to college. And so, I saw yesterday where you said, you know, if you'd have taken this $8 trillion and given it to people on Main Street, each man, woman, and child would get $60,000.
Yeah, but you couldn't have solved the problem that way. People just wouldn't have been grateful. Do you think, Joe? People wouldn't have been grateful for that $60,000. Now the
I would have been grateful.
They're grateful.
I would have been very grateful.
These idiots! I can't even believe what's happening in Washington. Steve, what do you think?
Well, everybody agrees that the bailout, we want to know where the money went and we know what a big mistake it was. But as far as the auto workers, not flying in their private jets back today to Washington, now they want more than $25 billion. If you add up what everybody wants, it comes to way more than...
workers. You're talking about the CEOs, right?
The CEOs, yeah, I'm sorry. But the workers...
They're paid pretty well, but not
no. But, what my listeners are saying is, and it relates to what Joe was saying, as far as the workers and the benefits and the health care. We don't want to pay for the health care of retired workers and their families when this is reorganized. That world doesn't exist anymore. So it has to all go by the wayside. The unions are complaining, we've given. Well, you know what? What's your alternative at this point? My listeners, and I don't want to pay for their health care. Well, I got to pay for my health care.
Well, you got to pay. Well, you got to do that. You got to do a lot of things. What do you think, Errol?
Well, I mean, look, the problem is you're going to pay for their health care whether you want to or not. You can either pay for it in some kind of rational fashion, or you can pay through the nose at public hospitals when people are using the emergency room for basic health care.
That is a serious issue, though, Errol. I mean, Steve raises an interesting point here, and I think it's one that we have to come to terms with. The working man and woman in this country can't afford health care, but is paying through their taxes for everybody from Barack Obama to George Bush to all of Congress for pretty fancy health care, for all the federal employees, for all the state and local employees. All of the folks working for the taxpayer got pretty doggone fancy health care. Well, but the taxpayer can't pay for it in most cases.
The crazy part of all of this is that if something approaching universal health care would cost on the order of $400 billion or so per year.
Let me put it this way, it won't approach $8.5 trillion.
That's the point. That's the point. We could have paid for universal health care many, many times over for the cost of what's being funneled to these banks and these bailout folks, and we still don't have. We haven't got the root of the problem solved, which is, dealing with the foreclosures and dealing with universal health care.
We could have paid off all of the homes that were being foreclosed upon over the past year with $200 billion. Right, so we would have at that point $8.3 trillion left. We could pay for health care. Now we'll have $7.9 trillion left. Yeah. We could have paid off all of Hank Paulson's buddies on Wall Street.
And look what was in the papers today, where the credit card companies are now going to cut, something like $2 trillion in consumer loans. So how do you jumpstart an economy if people simply can't get even credit to buy carpet?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, the next thing you're going to hear is the credit card companies need to bail out.
Oh, yeah.
Now, these are the gonifs. These are the gonifs who've been charging people, 30% interest rates. Fees, hidden fees, predatory. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And we'll be bailing out, the people, too. We'll be bailing out those who don't pay their credit card.
Right now.
And, Lou, I'm going to make another prediction. I don't think there's a single legislator here in Washington, D.C. that will understand the business plan that the automotive captains will bring to the table this week.
Well, I hope they ask two questions. Are you going to cut your outsourcing of middle-class jobs? And are you going to stop your offshoring of production of parts and automobiles for re-export into the world's richest consumer market?
And that's
if you're
what my
not going
audience
to answer,
wants. That's
you're
right.
getting rid of both, you don't get a nickel. But the
That's
problem is we didn't ask any of Hank Paulson's buddies on Wall Street any questions. We'll be back with our panel in just a moment. A reminder to please join me on the radio Monday through Friday for the Lou Dobbs Show. Tomorrow's guests include former Vice Presidential candidate Pat Choate, Father John Paris, the Walsh Professor of Bioethics at Boston College, and more. Go to the LouDobbsRadio.com to get your local listings for the Lou Dobbs Show on the radio. And in January, I want to announce tonight, you'll be able to hear me on New York City's historic WOR News Talk Radio, 7:10 a.m. We'll be right back. We're back with Joe Madison, Steve Malzberg, and Errol Louis. Let's turn to a man who could have been a presidential candidate, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, going after Plaxico Burress, full extent of the law. Guy walks into a nightclub, blows a hole in his thigh. I mean, Joe Madison, what is going on here?
Well, first of all, he's a fool. I hate to say that way, but anybody who shoots themselves in a nightclub has got to have his head examined. Two, you know, Bloomberg is grandstanding. You know that. I know it. New York knows it. And if you think that Plaxico Burress was going to not be prosecuted in New York City because he's a New York giant, come on. I mean, and you know what was so sad? It was the day before here in Washington, D.C., they were remembering the shooting death of Sean Taylor.
Yeah.
The whole thing is stupid, and this is pandering by the mayor in the worst way.
Well, Bloomberg's whole thing is guns, as you know all that he's done. You pointed out in your previous story. Also, you pointed out the hypocrisy. We're a sanctuary city here in Manhattan, and Bloomberg doesn't care about enforcing certain laws.
Doesn't care about the felonies of identity theft. Doesn't care about the felonies of smuggling illegal aliens into the country.
Away,
port security, border security.
I think Plaxico should go to jail if he did it. You know, if he did what he's accused of doing, absolutely. He broke the law. On the other hand, Mayor Bloomberg, this isn't the first time. Sean Bell shooting, he said the cops' 50 shots were too much. He said the guys that they shot did nothing wrong. He prejudged that case, too.
Listen, if the bullet that he had fired, Plaxico had fired, had ricocheted and killed someone, I suspect we'd be having a different conversation.
A totally different conversation.
Well, but it's the same facts. Essentially, he had an unlicensed handgun. He brings it to discharge a loaded weapon. An unlicensed loaded weapon in a crowded nightclub in New York is not a good idea.
So and all of the people. Put that down. I want to write that down. Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. All right. And illegal. And all of the people who enabled it to happen, the people who walked him around security, the hospital that never reported it.
We've also got the NFL security refused to cooperate with New York police.
Giants,
we got the NFL refused to cooperate with, And guess what? We got one victim right now. New York hospital suspended an employee who didn't know it was a gunshot wound, and no one's judged that. But meanwhile, they've been suspended.
Plaxico, you know what he's pleading? He read the Constitution. He read the Second Amendment, and he thinks he has a right to carry a gun. He's going to plead on that.
These guys should realize they're living a dream that most young people would never have a chance to live, and they ought to act accordingly.
I couldn't agree with you more. But you know what? You think back. I mean, I got to tell you. A young man with that kind of money and that kind of freedom, taught by society that he is so special that he doesn't have to pay. I mean, this didn't start with a handgun in the New York Giants.
Give the man a 3-year reality check. That's what I say, behind bars.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for giving me a reality check, as always. Joe Madison, thank you very much. Steve Malzberg, thank you very much. Errol Louis. And our poll results tonight, only 3% of you